Kevin Durant just suffered an injury which is expected to keep him out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is another way of saying that the Brooklyn Nets now officially suck at the game of basketball for at least a month. And this is coming from someone who is a Sixers fan, who doesn't like the Nets, and who doesn't particularly like Kevin Durant. This sucks. This is really a sad thing. Kevin Durant, in my opinion, was leading the MVP race and had a very strong case to be the best player in the NBA this season. This man was having arguably the greatest mid-range season in NBA history. 29 points a game, incredible efficiency across the board, and he was carrying this scrub Nets team on his back. And now, as much as I like the fact that they're going to fall out of the second seed, I don't like seeing a superstar player having an amazing season get hurt. I wanted to see the Brooklyn Nets lose games with Kevin Durant playing great, not with him on the bench. So this is really sad hours. And Nets fans, you may be sitting there thinking, well, we still got James Harden, Kyrie Irving might even come back, we're gonna be fine. No, you're not. Stop fooling yourself. You are not going to be fine. Kevin Durant has, LeBron James is getting all the credit this season for putting a team on his back and carrying them into the playoffs. Jokic too. Kevin Durant is not getting talked about enough for how much he does for this Brooklyn team. Alright, first of all, he's one of the only positive defenders on the entire roster. They have a pretty good defensive system, which is why I believe they are 14th in the league in defensive rating. Yes, 14th in defensive rating. A pretty much average defense, despite having very little defensive talent on this team. There is Nick Claxton and Bruce Brown, who are clear positives. DeAndre Bembry is a decent defender, and Kevin Durant is a decent defender. Everyone else on this roster is clearly bad on the defensive end. Seriously, they are not good. So losing Kevin Durant is not going to help them on that end, but obviously, the big loss is on offense. Yes, James Harden has nice numbers on the surface, 23, 10, and 8. You might be thinking, well, he can get his scoring numbers up, blah, blah, blah. The man's efficiency is ass. Straight up, it is terrible. This man has been a brick this season by his standards. 42% from the field, 34% from 3. This is not the James Harden we know, and something tells me that losing Kevin Durant and having the defense really be able to focus in on James Harden is not going to make him more efficient. Let's break down almost every single offensive possession for the Brooklyn Nets this season, alright? They've got a few different things they do. Sometimes Patty Mills or Joe Harris, in the few games that Joe Harris has played, will get a wide open 3 and they drain it. Patty Mills has been really good this season, by the way. He's exactly what they want him to do. He's a good secondary ball handler, and he's a sniper from 3. Exactly what they want. Sometimes Nick Claxton will manage to get an amazing lob in the post and yam it on somebody, and it's a great highlight. And sometimes James Harden will drive into a dude, throw himself into them, and either get the foul call or not get the foul call, and depending on which one happened, he either goes to the free throw line or cries for about 5 seconds and then runs back up the floor very slowly because he is out of shape. Or the other 80% of the time, because that was about 20% of their plays right there, the other 80% of the time, Kevin Durant gets the ball, dribbles it in front of 2 defenders, because literally everyone on the other team is looking at him on the court, and then drains some impossible shot directly in someone's face that nobody thought was going in, except for the fact that it left Kevin Durant's hand, and therefore everyone was like, yeah, that's pretty much money, because the dude is ridiculous. And the funny thing is, not only are you losing the 29 points that Kevin Durant scores himself, but a lot of those other points come directly from Kevin Durant, because the Nets offense is pretty much just give Kevin Durant the ball, and if you get open, take an open shot. If you are not James Harden, nobody on this team really creates their own shot. You see LaMarcus Aldridge get some nice mid-ranges from the centers doing drop coverage on him, or Patty Mills getting these open three-pointers, or Nick Claxton getting these lobs, but all of these things come from the fact that Kevin Durant takes so much defensive attention that people just ignore these other players, because you are going to try, and usually fail, to stop Kevin Durant before you do anything else when you are playing against the Brooklyn Nets. So not only have they lost all of Kevin Durant's amazing scoring, including in the clutch, where he has been absolutely insane in the clutch this season. We've talked about DeMar and Jokic and Embiid. We know how good they are in the clutch. But for my money, the best clutch player in the league this season is Kevin Durant, because I have seen so many Nets games this year where the score is close and it comes down to the end and they just keep giving Kevin Durant the ball. And the man gets double teamed, sometimes he gets triple teamed, and he just keeps draining shots that no one has any right to make. This man will have a hand in his face and he just straight swishes it. Over and over. I've literally seen him do it like 3 straight possessions coming down the floor at the end of the fourth quarter in a close game where he just, bam, one right after another, keeps draining these shots that have no right to go in. No right whatsoever. The Nets probably have like 10 to 15 less wins. That's maybe a slight exaggeration. Probably like 5 to 10 less wins just without Kevin Durant being as absurdly good as he is. Not even without Kevin Durant, period, but just with him being like a little bit worse in the fourth quarter, with him being as good as pretty much any other All-Star in the fourth quarter, they have several less wins because he just keeps hitting these ridiculous shots and he's unstoppable. Okay? Now take him away for the entire game, and they're not losing close games because he carries them the entire time. This is not a good, deep team here. It's not. It's a bad defensive team, and their entire offense is based around Kevin Durant hitting impossible shots. So if you want this Nets team to stay in the play-in tournament for the next month, alright, by the time Kevin Durant comes back, you want this to be a play-in team, here's what you gotta do. You gotta pray that the Nets choose to pay Kyrie's fines, which I don't think they should do. I don't think he deserves that. But you pray they pay his fines so he can come back. You pray that he comes back 100% and is actually in shape in all the games he plays, so he's not literally like the worst defender ever and he's doing his Kyrie All-Star thing. You pray that James Harden gets his shit together and starts playing like a superstar again, because he's not been that at all this season, or really since he came to Brooklyn. And then you pray that Kevin Durant has a speedy recovery and is back in like 4 weeks at most, instead of 6 weeks or longer. And if all those things happen, maybe this team still stays in the playoffs, because right now, I don't think they're going to be not in the play. I botched my words there. I think they're going to be in the play-in tournament by the time Kevin Durant comes back, because you look at their schedule. They've got 2 long road trips coming up, including one that takes them out west against the Warriors, the Jazz, and the Suns. And the worst teams they play over this next month are the Spurs once on the road. They play the Kings twice. Those are the worst teams they play, are some below average teams, but not like tanking teams, not terrible teams. They just play a ton of playoff teams. This is like their toughest part of the remaining schedule, and they're not going to have Kevin Durant. So this is the rest of the league's chance. This is the rest of the Eastern Conference's chance to get up there in the standings, and this is it for the Brooklyn Nets, their other players. Specifically James Harden, I would say. Him more than anyone, and if Kyrie comes back, then him as well. Specifically the other stars on this team, to prove that they can still be that dude and can still carry a team, because so far it has been the Kevin Durant show 100%, and if the Nets are going to stay in the playoffs this year, they're about to need everyone else to get their shit together.